Imagine a battlefield where every shadow hides a secret, and every act of kindness could mean your death. This is the story of a nurse history almost forgot, a woman who chose compassion over safety, who walked through ruins and gunfire, not to fight a war, but to save lives caught inside it. In a world where hope was fading, she became a quiet defiance against the darkness. But what impossible choices did she make? And what did it cost her to heal the wounded in secret? War rarely announces itself all at once. It creeps in slowly, in quieter streets, in longer silences, in the way people stopped looking each other in the eyes. Before the bombs, before the sirens, before the hospitals overflowed, the city still felt ordinary. Market doors opened each morning. Children ran between buildings. Church bells rang on schedule. She had always believed in routine. Her uniform was simple. Her days were predictable. Broken bones, fevers, births in the early hours of dawn. She had chosen nursing not because she wanted recognition, but because she believed in something steady, that no matter how broken the world felt, healing was always possible. Then the war arrived. At first, the wounded came in waves. Soldiers carried through hospital doors with dirt still on their boots. Civilians pulled from rubble. Faces she recognized, now pale and silent. Supplies thinned. Sleep disappeared. Fear became a background noise no one spoke about. Still, she followed orders. Treat those assigned to your ward. Record what you are told to record. Ask no questions. It was easier that way. Until the night someone knocked at the back entrance. Not through official channels. Not on any registry. A young man was carried in by two neighbors. No uniform. No insignia. Just a wound that would not wait. He wasn't supposed to be treated there. Regulations were clear. Helping the wrong person could mean arrest. It could mean prison. It could mean worse. The neighbors begged her without speaking. She looked at the wound, then at the hallway, then back at him. In that moment, something shifted inside her. She remembered why she became a nurse. Not for rules, not for politics, not for sides, for life. She closed the door quietly. The lights stayed dim. No official records were written. No report was filed. She worked in silence, cleaning the wound with what little antiseptic remained, sewing carefully, listening for footsteps outside. Every sound felt amplified. The scratch of thread, the shallow breathing of the injured boy, the distant echo of boots somewhere down the street. If she was discovered, she would stand alone. But she continued. When it was finished, the young man was stable, not safe, not fully healed, but alive. That night, she realized something. There was a front line no one talked about, not where bullets flew, but where compassion defied fear, and she had just crossed it. One life saved in secret should have been enough. It should have remained a single act of quiet mercy. But war spreads stories the way it spreads fear, through whispers. Within days, word traveled carefully through alleyways and shuttered windows. If someone is hurt, find her. No one said her name loudly. No one wrote it down. It passed in murmurs, in glances, held a second too long, in hands squeezing briefly before letting go. She tried to ignore it. She had already crossed a line. Crossing it again would not make things safer. But then, another knock came. This time, not at the hospital. At her door. It was past curfew. The street outside was silent. The kind of silence that made every sound feel dangerous. She hesitated. Opening that door could mean everything. But leaving it closed could mean someone dying just beyond it. She opened it. A man stood there, supported by two others. His coat was soaked through, dark against the dim light. He could barely stand. There was no time to think about consequences. She cleared her small kitchen table, boiled water, tore clean sheets into strips, used thread meant for clothing to close flesh that should have been stitched in a proper operating room. The entire time, she listened. For boots, for engines, for the sound of a knock that would not ask permission. When the man was stable enough to move, they carried him away before dawn. No thank you spoken aloud. No names exchanged. Only a look that carried everything. After that night, it didn't stop. She began moving through the city after dark, not in uniform, not as a nurse officially assigned to any ward. Cellars became clinics. Storage rooms became recovery spaces. Churches offered basements. Bakeries offered back rooms. She learned to hide supplies beneath loaves of bread, to carry bandages inside empty flour sacks, to memorize routes that avoided checkpoints. She could no longer treat patients in the open. She worked by candlelight. She stitched in silence. She measured medicine carefully, knowing there would not be enough for the next person if she miscalculated. Every step outside was calculated. Every return home felt borrowed. There were nights when patrols passed so close she could hear their breathing. Nights when someone she had treated was arrested days later. Nights when she wondered if helping had only delayed the inevitable. Fear became constant. Not loud, not overwhelming, just present. And yet, so was something else, resolve. Because for every risk taken, there was a life that would see another sunrise. And in a city where so much was being destroyed, even one sunrise felt like defiance. She was no longer just tending wounds. She was protecting hope. And with each act of compassion, the danger grew. Heroism, when hidden, is lonely. No one applauded her. No one thanked her publicly. During the day, she returned to the hospital as if nothing had changed. She followed protocols. She filled out charts. She answered to supervisors who had no idea that when night fell, she walked a different line entirely. The double life began to wear on her. She could not confide in her colleagues. Even speaking too carefully could invite suspicion. She stopped sharing stories, stopped lingering in conversations. The distance between her and the world grew slowly, almost imperceptibly. At night, she became someone else. She moved through ruined streets with quiet precision. She knocked 3 times, paused, then twice more. The agreed signal. She descended staircases that smelled of damp stone and fear. She treated wounds under the faint glow of candles that trembled with every draft. She learned to work quickly. There were nights she saved 3 lives. There were nights she saved none. The losses followed her home more than the victories did. She began to recognize the moment when hope slipped away, the change in breathing, the way fingers tightened briefly before falling still. She held hands longer than she needed to, whispered reassurances she wasn't sure she believed herself. And then there were the moral choices. Sometimes 2 injured men arrived at once. Supplies were never enough. Medicine ran out faster than it could be replaced. Who receives the last vial of morphine? Who gets the final clean bandage? Who do you tell to hold on? And who do you silently let go? She never imagined nursing would demand such decisions. Her oath had been to heal. Now it required judgment. There were times she questioned herself. If she was caught, others would suffer. Families could be punished. Entire buildings searched because of her. Was she saving lives? Or putting more at risk? The line blurred constantly. But every time doubt grew too loud, she remembered the first boy. The one who would have died without intervention. The one who walked out on his own 2 feet because she chose action over fear. That memory anchored her. Still, the fear never disappeared. She learned to sleep lightly, always listening for the wrong kind of knock. She hid medical tools beneath floorboards, burned scraps of cloth that could not be traced. The city felt smaller now. Every shadow could carry danger. And yet, every shadow also carried someone waiting. She was no longer just a nurse. She was a secret, and secrets in wartime never stay hidden forever. It happened on a night that felt no different from the others. Cold air, heavy silence, the distant echo of movement somewhere beyond the buildings. She had just finished closing a wound in a cellar beneath what used to be a bookstore. Dust still clung to the air. The smell of paper and antiseptic mixed in a way that no one would ever forget. The patient was stable, not safe, not fully recovered, but alive. That was usually enough. Then came the sound. Boots, not passing by, stopping. The room froze. No one needed to speak. The candlelight flickered violently, as if reacting to the tension itself. Someone moved to hide supplies. Someone else whispered a prayer too soft to hear. The knock was not polite. It was forceful. The door gave way before anyone could reach it. Light flooded the cellar, harsh, accusing. She stood not because she wanted to, because she knew running would condemn everyone else. The officer stepped forward first. His uniform marked authority. His face marked exhaustion. His eyes scanned the room, the wounded men, the hidden supplies, the makeshift operating table. There was no denying it. She had broken every rule. The silence stretched. No one moved. No one spoke. Then something unexpected happened. The officer looked at her, truly looked at her, as if searching for something beyond the obvious. Recognition flickered. Months earlier, in a rain-soaked alley after a skirmish, she had treated a soldier who had been left behind. A man barely conscious. A man who should have died. He had lived. And now he stood in uniform before her. He understood what he was seeing. He also understood what it meant. The men behind him waited for instruction. The cellar waited for judgment. The officer turned slowly toward his patrol. "There's nothing here," he said calmly. Confusion passed between the soldiers. But authority does not invite debate. They stepped back. Boots retreated. The door remained open, but the threat had moved with them. When the sound of movement finally faded, no one in the cellar spoke for a long time. She did not collapse. She did not cry. She simply exhaled, the kind of breath held too long to measure. That night changed something. Her secret had come close to ending everything, but it had also revealed something else. Even in war, even within the ranks of power, compassion could echo. She knew the risk had doubled now. She had been seen. And though she had been spared, mercy in wartime is never guaranteed twice. Still, the next night, when someone knocked softly at her door, she opened it. Because the danger had not ended, and neither had the need. When the war finally ended, it did not end quietly. Crowds filled streets. Flags appeared in windows. Church bells rang again, this time not in fear, but in relief. The city began rebuilding itself, brick by brick. But some stories remained buried beneath the rubble. She returned to the hospital officially. Back to clean sheets. Back to structured wards. Back to paperwork and daylight. No one announced what she had done. There were no medals pinned to her uniform. No ceremony recognizing the nights spent walking through darkness with hidden bandages and stolen medicine. Because her work had never been public. It had lived in whispers. In cellars. In rooms that no longer existed. For a while, she said nothing. Perhaps she believed it was better that way. War leaves enough ghosts without inviting more attention. Years passed. The city healed in visible ways. Buildings restored. Streets repaved. Markets reopened. Children played again where once there had been rubble. But healing has layers. One afternoon, a man stood outside the hospital doors, waiting. He was older now. Taller than she remembered. Strong. He held a hat in his hands the way people do when words feel too small. She recognized his eyes before she recognized his face. He had been one of the boy from the back entrance. He had survived. And he had come back, not as a patient, but as proof. After him, others found her. Men who carried faint scars, where stitches once held their lives together. Men who had families now, children, futures. They did not bring medals. They brought gratitude. Slowly, her story began to surface. Not in newspapers, not in headlines, but in conversations passed through generations. My grandfather once told me, my father said there was a nurse who she never sought recognition. She never corrected the details when they were told imperfectly. Because what mattered was not accuracy of memory. It was continuity of life. History often celebrates the loudest acts. Battles won. Territories gained. Leaders remembered. But there is another kind of courage. One that does not shout. One that moves quietly through darkness. One that risks everything without expecting anything in return. Her legacy was not carved into stone. It was carried in beating hearts. Today, across the world, there are still nurses walking into unstable regions with nothing but training and conviction. Still choosing to heal in places where destruction feels easier. Still standing in the invisible front lines of humanity. Her story is not just about war. It is about choice. About the moment when fear and compassion stand side by side, and compassion wins. She never asked to be remembered. But every life she saved became a living echo of her courage. And sometimes, the greatest heroes are the ones who remain silent. War teaches the world how loud destruction can be. But it rarely teaches how quiet courage must become to survive. She never stood on a battlefield holding a weapon. She never commanded troops. Her name was never printed in bold headlines. And yet, somewhere in the shadows of history, her choices shifted the future, not through force, but through mercy. In a time when fear was the safest option, she chose compassion. In a world dividing itself into enemies and allies, she chose life. And that choice, repeated night after night, became her silent rebellion. There are no monuments built for every act of hidden courage. No statues carved for every hand that stitched wounds in secret. But history is not built only by generals and victories. It is built by moments. Moments when someone steps forward instead of stepping back. Moments when doing nothing would be safer, but doing something is right. Today, her story reminds us of something simple and powerful. Courage does not always roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it works in darkness. Sometimes it survives because someone refused to look away. If you ever wonder whether one person can make a difference in the face of chaos, remember her. Because in the quietest corners of war, a single nurse changed the course of countless lives. And she did it without asking to be remembered.